Good afternoon, Brazil. Thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. It's a privilege to come down here and see what amazing things are going on in São Paulo and neighboring areas. I'm going to put up a comment from a CEO of a cable network and ponder this for a moment in how media is really changing and why it's changing. When someone in this industry, in the television industry, says something like this, you know things are afoot and they are changing. And when I look at the industry, we have to look at the history of the screens. First, we have the first screen, the silver screen. Mega corporations were created around this screen. We know MGM, Universal, Columbia, and just a fantastic industry that still exists today. Of course, screen number two, television, phenomenal impact on our society, and I think it's interesting when you look at some of the corporations that began there and where they've transformed to. For instance, RCA at one time was the most powerful corporation in the world. Now it is a brand that China owns. At the same time, NBC, which was an RCA property, became NBC Universal, which, they bought the first screen. Then Comcast recently bought NBC. So when you look at this evolution of screens and the way that media and advertising moves, it always moves to the next screen. Then we have the third screen. Google, AOL, Amazon, Facebook, MySpace, explosive. But it took a while to get there. But now it's very commonplace. And of course the fourth screen, which is having huge impacts, very, very difficult screen to get a message to, but still, look at the mega corporations that have been created around these screens. Phenomenal. Then of course we have the fifth screen being digital out of home, digital signage. However you look at it, however you say it, it is where we play, work, it's where we learn, it's where we eat. It's in our restaurants, it's in our stores, it's in our banks, it's in our elevators, it's here all over the show. It is a new way to reach an audience. Not so new in my industry because it's been around for 9 years, but it is afoot and it's moving very, very rapidly. The growth rate is high. And it's interesting, this screen is the first screen where it matches the consumer's expectation. And what I mean by that is that with television, I'm watching television, here comes a commercial. Zip, 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 zip. Okay, now I get back to my program. The consumer thinks TV is for entertainment. We know it's the business of advertising, but the consumer thinks it's entertainment. So when you get into the fifth screen, the consumer expects, and their expectations are different because it's relevant. It's in the venue. It's where they're at. It's what they're doing. And that content being relevant actually adds to that whole message that connects with the consumer, and depending what their mindset is. So if we look at the three types of networks, we have point of wait, where I may be in an elevator, waiting 60 seconds to get to the next floor. I may be in the doctor's office for a half an hour, waiting. I may be in the subway. I may be on the bus. But anywhere where there's dwell time, where the consumer has this time that we can capture and deliver relevant content and relevant advertising. If I'm in a doctor's office and I say, am I interested in something there? Because why am I there? Because I'm there for health reasons. So therefore, I'm interested in content and products that might be related to my health. Very targeted, very narrowcast, and I like point of wait. Point of sale, obviously, what's point of sale about? It's about shopping. How can we help you buy something today? Very simple. Some networks are hybrid networks in the U.S. where they'll put, like CBS and Sign Story, out of home. They put advertising on the screens. But there are ways that you can add non-endemic advertising that's not within the store. But if it's mixed with product and offers, then it can be successful. The last one is point of transit. So point of transit's people on the go. Digital billboards, the platform stations in trains and subways. We're flying by those screens. So what happens when you look at these networks, each one of them becomes different types of content and at different speeds. So the delivery of which that content might be there, or how long I might be in front of that screen, is going to change. I might have a 10-second ad that's running at point of transit. I might have a 30-second or 60-second ad that's running in a point of wait. I might be in a point of wait. I know some networks here locally in maternity wards that the woman is there for 3 days. And in those 3 days, she watches 9 hours of a specific program which is about being a new mom. So very relevant content, very, very powerful medium. And I think the other thing I really need to emphasize is that because each screen in the history of media requires its own thought process. For instance, when the internet came, the publishers, magazine publishers, came out and said, hey, let's put all our content on the internet. Did it work? No, it didn't work. Today we have full media that's going on those screens and different ways that we approach it. And it went through some growth, very tough times also. So I think when you look at the fifth screen, you need to consider the media that it is. It's a very visual media. Most of the time we don't have sound. So how can I put a television commercial on the fifth screen? It's not as easy, so you need to create assets that are more appropriate for the media that's there. So a couple different things about the business models. I think when you look at the venue owned, and what I mean by that is if I'm a retailer, in the U.S. we have Best Buy and Target, they own their own screens. They take the money from a budget that is under the trade marketing teams, and it's merchandising money. Not advertising, but merchandising. Totally different purpose. So these are venue-owned or store-owned or retail. It's mostly in retail that you'll find these. Third-party owned is a huge area that really covers a lot of the point of the wait type of networks. And this money is coming from traditional out-of-home space. So either national advertising or local. And when you look at these ratios, they're usually about 70, 30, 60, 40 of local and national, local being the higher number. And one of the reasons that is that way is simply because the networks are not to scale quite yet. In the U.S., we see a lot of people see these screens, but the national footprint is not quite there. Here in Brazil, I'm very impressed with some of the scale, but still, it's less than 2% of the total market as far as penetration. And I say that this will reach 25% penetration in the next 5 years. Huge growth, great place for ad dollars. So, in the U.S., some interesting numbers that I'll try and expand on a little bit. The ad growth last year, 13.5%. Horrible, but good. In the economic conditions, that's pretty darn good. The total ad revenue in 2009, $2.5 billion. The projected revenue is about $4 billion. Now, as these networks expand and become consolidated in national footprints, we expect those numbers to grow more rapidly because agencies have a tough time buying network by network by network. So as these become larger networks, an agency can then buy those consolidated networks easily. So Types of networks, again, over 200 ad networks just for advertising, 425,000 screens, 2,000 billboards, digital billboards. I know they're not here in Sao Paulo, but in the U.S., there's been a lot of controversy, there's been a lot of studies, does it cause accidents, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much been put to rest, and there's a lot of conversion from the static billboards to digital billboards. And they're doing it because they don't have to have that ad up there for a month. They can have 7 times the revenue, and they can day part it. So in the morning, it's a different message than in the evening. Then 300,000 screens in retail, most of those being in Kroger's, Best Buy, Target. Internal corporation, internal communications, back office. I have a company that's called MediaTile. We do stuff in Eli Lilly, Rolls-Royce. Very, very effective way to meet the worker, especially workers that are not part of a desk and don't have an internet connection. They feel more connected with the company. And again, it's still very, very fragmented. Although these are pretty good-sized numbers, it's still fragmented. So I think this is really telling where the out-of-home industry is and how many people are actually seeing this platform. In the U.S., it's very engaging in the sense that 70% of the population sees these screens in the last 30 days, within a month. Compared to how many people have a Facebook profile, 41%. Interesting, shocking actually when I saw these numbers. And again, you look at, oh, well, how many people ever sent a text message? This is US now, but 56%. So these screens are very, very ubiquitous in the marketplace, and they're powerful tools. So using it as part of the ad mix, I think, is very important. A couple other noteworthy stats. We kind of break it up a little further so you can kind of see what type of networks and where these networks are being built in the U.S. In retail, let's say in malls, which is ad space, in quick-serve restaurants like Wendy's, McDonald's, those kind of restaurants. Not at the checkout. These are advertising screens, but in the dining area where I might be there for 30, 45 minutes. At the gas pump. Every time, because, you know, in the U.S. we pump our own gas. I wish not, but we do. And so there's screens. You get out, there's a screen there, you know, tells you the latest thing. But one interesting thing about this whole industry in the way, since I pump my own gas, I see the screen, they're wanting me to go into the store. Because since we pump our own gas, we don't go in the store as much. We pay at the pump. So transportation, this is the mostly digital billboards and airports. You know, where I pick up my baggage, there's a screen there. That's Clear Channel, JC Decaux, Lamar, CBS. Verifone actually does taxis in New York. I'm not counting corporate communications. There's no ad dollars against that. Education, now, I mean on campus, in universities, where there's relevant content and advertising to a very, very hard-to-reach group, the younger audience that's there going to the universities. Healthcare, I really like healthcare. I think healthcare is interesting. I mean, in the U.S., like me, baby boomer, we're becoming of age. There's no longer enough handicap spots for us. So we're going to be visiting the doctor's office, the hospital, more and more. And as that happens, those networks grow. Pharmaceuticals are highly interested in these very targeted areas. Also dentists, health clubs. So I go to McDonald's, I get supersized. I go to the health club, I work out, there's a screen also. So it works both ways. There's no way to avoid them when you're out in the marketplace. So some installations out in the U.S. The first one on the left is more about brands at the shelf. And I see this here too. I saw it with Nestle, has some screens at the shelf.